So let's talk about something that I think a lot of us runners are dealing with these days. It's this weird paradox. We have all this amazing tech and data to make our running perfect, but what if that very quest for perfection is actually making it, well, worse?
So let me just ask you straight up. Is that fancy watch on your wrist actually sabotaging your run? I know, it sounds a little dramatic, but honestly, think about it. It really gets to the heart of this feeling a lot of us have every single time we head out the door. Oh, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? The second you stop moving, you hit that button on your watch, and what's the very first thing you do? It's not stretching, it's not grabbing water, it's staring at that screen, isn't it? Picking apart every single metric. It's become this automatic ritual for pretty much every modern runner.
And that right there, that's what brings us to our first section, what I'm calling the runner's perfection trap. It's this sneaky cycle that so many of us fall into, where chasing the perfect run actually ends up getting in the way of just, running.
It's such a familiar pattern. We measure every little detail, and then what do? We run straight to the internet to figure out what it all means. We get completely lost in a rabbit hole of articles and forum posts, and then we start messing with our training, all for what? For some tiny, tiny advantage.
Which leads us right into our next big point here. We are literally drowning in a sea of data. The amount of information we have at our fingertips can get so overwhelming that it actually starts to work against us. I mean, just think about all the jargon we hear constantly. Zone 2, VO2 max, cadence, power output. As running coach Adolfo Salgueiro points out, a lot of us throw these terms around without really getting the full picture. We'll say we're doing a Zone 2 run, but did we actually do the test to set our zones correctly? Most of the time, the answer is no. And this is where Coach Salgueiro just hits the nail on the head. He says, stop chasing perfection. Overthinking can and will sabotage your running. It's so blunt, but it's so true. When you get lost in all those little details, you can completely forget why you even started running in the first place.
So you've basically got two different ways of looking at it. On one side, you have the perfectionist who's obsessed with hitting perfect splits and a specific cadence. And on the other, you have the process-focused runner. They're asking totally different questions. How did I feel? Did I enjoy myself? One's about data, the other's about experience.
Okay, so that brings us to the real million-dollar question. Why does this whole perfectionist thing actually fail in the long run? Let's get into why a different kind of mindset is so much more powerful. This is where thinkers like Brad Stulberg and Steve Magnus come in, and they really challenge this whole idea of optimization. They ask a pretty radical question. What if the whole point of training isn't about having perfect control over everything? What if it's actually about building resilience for when things inevitably go wrong? And this quote from them, man, it just says it all. Just let that sink in for a second. True performance, your real strength, doesn't show up when everything's perfect. It shows up on those days when you barely slept, your whole schedule's a mess, and you still somehow manage to get out there and do the work.
And that's the real kicker here. When we're always chasing these perfect conditions, we're not making ourselves tougher. We're actually just feeding our own anxiety and making ourselves more fragile. We trick ourselves into believing that we can only do well if everything lines up perfectly.
Okay, so this leads us to a really fascinating, kind of backwards idea, the power of bad days. It's this concept that instead of running from imperfection, we can actually use it to get stronger. Let me tell you a quick story about this. Pro golfer J.J. Spawn is about to tee off at the U.S. Open. We're talking maximum pressure. The night before, he was up all night with his sick kid. So by any normal measure, his prep was totally shot. But instead of freaking out, he just decided, in his words, to take the bad day along for the ride. And what happened? He adapted, he pushed through, and he ended up winning the whole thing.
And that story just sums it all up, doesn't it? Excellence isn't about being flawless. It's about showing up and fighting with whatever you've got on that particular day. It's about being persistent, not perfect.
So what does all of this mean for us, the regular amateur runners? That brings us to our final section, running for the long haul.
Let's just be real for a second. For pretty much all of us, our paycheck doesn't depend on how we do in our next 10K. Our family and friends are going to be proud of us just for showing up and giving it a shot, whether we get a personal best or not.
And I want to leave you with this really beautiful thought from the writer Haruki Murakami, who was also a huge runner. He said, "I'll be happy if running and I grow old together." Wow, that just totally reframes the whole goal, doesn't it? It's not about short-term wins, it's about a long-term relationship with the sport.
So as we wrap this up, I want you to really think about this question.
Just for a minute, forget the pace, forget the data, forget what everyone on the internet is saying. What is your real reason for running? Because answering that for yourself, that might be the only metric that truly matters.